Men, what's the creepiest thing a girl has said or done to you? Story 1. I worked as a bartender at a dive bar years ago. Late one night, I had just one customer, a middle-aged woman, polite and concise when ordering her drink. Nothing seemed off, no red flags. I went about my closing tasks, sweeping around the tables not behind the bar. Focused on cleaning and getting out, I turned to empty the dustpan, and she was right behind me, staring into my eyes. "Would you dance with me?" she asked in a slow, nervous tone. To be clear, no music was playing and we were the only two in the building. I politely said I was closing and couldn't, quickly putting distance between us by walking behind the bar. In the 5 seconds it took me to cross the kitchen, she was back on her stool, sobbing hysterically at full volume. She asked if I thought she was ugly, fat, unattractive, several self-deprecating things which I denied, trying to deflect. Suddenly she screamed that she hated me and stormed out. I marked her half-drunk beer as a loss, locked the door and continued working there for 7 more years. I never saw her again. Story 2. A few years ago, I started dating a girl from my friend group who occasionally joined us for trivia nights. At first, everything was fine, but then I noticed odd signs. She never slept, did bizarre things like starting a shower, then cooking, then tending to her plants as if constantly forgetting what she was doing. She put a sign in her yard with her phone number to connect with strangers. Things got weirder. I mentioned I liked thunderstorms and she became convinced I could make them happen. I thought she was joking, but it started to unnerve me. One night, staying over at her place, I woke to find her sitting on the bed, staring at me. She placed her hand on my chest and whispered she could hear the beautiful fish in my blood. That morning, her father burst into her apartment, yelling about a psychiatrist appointment she'd been avoiding. She told me her parents and doctors wanted to convince her she had bipolar disorder, claiming they just wanted to shut off her brain. Long story short, her friends and family convinced her to get help. She bravely faced her mental illness, got treatment before her manic episode spiraled, and we're still good friends today. Story 3. In college, I was in a study group and ended up chatting with a girl. At first, we discussed class, then the conversation drifted to casual topics like campus life and favorite cheap eateries nearby. After a brief silence, out of nowhere, she said she'd love to see me fight off a group of men trying to attack her and would hug me while I lay on the ground, beaten and bleeding. Going from discussing budget food spots to that in a minute was just too much. Story 4. I was on OkCupid and started talking to a girl. One of my first questions was, "What are you looking for here?" Her response was something like, "Honestly, I'm looking for a sweet guy I can take drinking at night, bring back to my apartment, get into bed, tie up, choke until he stops struggling, and then donate his skeleton to science." Gave me chills. She also had a real human skull on her desk because she worked with bodies as a forensic anthropologist. She added, "Just wanted to see if you'd stick around." What made this crazier was that, before this, she messaged me saying she might have missed a period. I responded, "Oh, well, if you're pregnant?" She, unprompted, mentioned abortion as an option. "Fine, no issue, I wouldn't have to worry about raising a kid as a minor." Keep in mind, we weren't even sure she was pregnant. Then she messaged again, saying she'd changed her mind and might want to keep the baby if she was pregnant. I reasonably asked what changed. She accused me of pressuring her, called me a jerk, and stopped responding. A day or two later, she said she was never pregnant and referenced her earlier test to see if I'd stay. I guess, not knowing me, she thought it was okay to play with something like that. God, I wish it had ended there. Story 5. It's less what was said and more what happened. I dated this girl on and off for 5 years through my late teens and early 20s. By our final stint, she'd done so many embarrassing and annoying things that I ended it for good. Over those years, she and her family had given me many gifts for my home. When I told her it was over forever, she exploded, screaming she'd cheated, never loved me, and stormed off. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. This was the late 90s, with a detailed list of everything she and her family had given me, including a $300 invoice for plane tickets to Los Angeles to visit her dad 4 years earlier. She'd insisted I go, paid for the tickets, but now demanded repayment. The list had 20 to 30 items, including my bedroom trash can and curtains. I laughed and moved on. 2 days later, I came home from work and noticed things missing from my room. Most obviously the curtains. On my desk was a note confirming she'd broken in, taken most listed items, and reminded me I owed her $300. It got worse. I called, saying I wouldn't call the police if she returned my stuff. She screamed like a maniac, claiming the items were hers. I hung up and called the police. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no unless she kept contacting me. What bothered me most was her entering my home while I was gone. A few days later, I got 2 more letters. One to the dean of social work at my university, another to me. The dean's letter said to ignore any news about her, as I was the crazy one and anything said about her was false. Her letter to me explained I'd forced her to write to the dean by accusing her of burglary and calling the police. Easily the most insane thing a woman has done to me. There are more stories about her, but this was the worst. Story 6. A drunk customer, or so I assume, as she'd never acted like this before, old enough to be my mother, kept flirting with me. I was 21 working as a cashier. She was a regular I'd served many times without issue. At first she said, "Can I tell you something? I find you very attractive." If it had stopped there, I'd have been flattered, as I don't get compliments often, and moved on. But it didn't. She said she really had a crush on me. Then, "God, you're younger than my son. This is so wrong, but I find you so sexy." Just then, my register froze and I had to move her to another line. Her comments grew bolder, repeating the same things, winking, and at one point I swear she caressed her chest. Thank God the store was busy. She tried lingering after paying to keep telling me how much she liked me and how naughty she felt, but with so many customers, I ignored her until she left alone. I haven't seen her since. Story 7. The girl I was dating asked if I'd changed the locks since breaking up with my ex months earlier. I said no, but my ex wasn't crazy, so it never worried me. She said she wouldn't feel comfortable sleeping at my place unless I changed them. I did the next day. My ex texted me angrily, "So you changed the locks, huh? Real nice jerk." That meant she'd been entering my house the whole time, doing who knows what. The new girl didn't know my ex or contact her. I'd met both on a dating app in a big city with no connection between them. My work schedule was fixed, so my ex knew when I wasn't home. The girl who suggested changing the locks was kind and normal, but we didn't work out because she wanted something serious and I wasn't ready. Years later, my ex is still obsessed with me. It's been stressful, but I've done everything to cut contact. Story 8. This happened when my friends and I were into the bar and live band scene in college. One night, we went to a bar, had a couple of rounds, not enough to get drunk, but we were having fun. 2 girls approached and introduced themselves. One seemed normal, but the other had a sour expression, though she was oddly attractive. My friends thought, "Great, 2 girls making the first move, let's see where this goes." The second girl sat next to me and acted strange from the start. She'd push a beer toward me and say, "Chug it." I ignored her and she didn't seem to care, but kept giving orders all night, saying things like, "Dance with me," or "Take a shot." Meanwhile, her friend chatted with my friends like nothing was wrong. Suddenly, this weird girl changed like she was possessed. She glared at us with intense hatred, eyes full of rage, and scratched one of my friends' necks. Without thinking twice, we bolted. The buzz wore off instantly. On the way back, we were silent, completely shocked. Story 9. My local vet, a middle-aged woman, always seemed kind and attentive, no issues. But she started texting me late at night, inviting me for coffee, saying I reminded her of her kids who lived far away. When she offered me money, I blocked her number immediately. Her tone gave off a deeply unsettling vibe. That same night, my house lost power unexpectedly at midnight. For a moment, I panicked, thinking she'd cut the electricity and was about to break in. Turns out, the whole neighborhood went dark. Story 10. On a first date, a girl bragged, unprompted, about everything she'd stolen from supermarkets and how she got an adrenaline rush each time. It was bizarre. Story 11. A girl tried walking behind me in a narrow hallway behind a restaurant, between me and a cart. She bumped into me, struggling to pass, and said, "It's that baseball butt." I asked what she meant, and she said baseball players have big butts. Later, she called me baseball butt, like it was my nickname. Not exactly terrifying, but it made me uncomfortable. Story 12. A girl completely catfished me. After the date, she winked seductively and said, "Want to go somewhere more comfortable?" Story 13. At 16 in high school, a classmate became obsessed with me, sending tons of weird messages. She always tried to be my science lab partner and stared at me constantly. I was polite but never engaged. Over time, she got scary and got me in big trouble. Her messages became disturbing and I didn't know what to do. One night, it got bad. She sent a photo of my name carved into her arm. I didn't know how to handle it. The next day, I planned to tell a teacher to get her help, but before I could, she told everyone I'd told her to carve my name. It was a horrible day. I was attacked at school, police came to my house, took my phone, and treated me like a criminal. Everyone except my two best friends believed I was guilty. The next day, I was called to the principal's office and told I was expelled. My dad, furious, took me home, refusing to hear my side. That night, the police returned with my phone, confirming I had no involvement. They apologized, explained to my dad, and said I could return to school. She was gone by then. Story 14. At my new job, I shared a small office with a woman my age and a couple of others. She was kind of cute but odd and very naive, raised in a rural area. She flirted heavily, but I wasn't interested. Then she started emailing me long daily emails detailing her entire day. I never responded until she sent a massive email confessing her love. I replied, explaining why it wouldn't work and asking her to stop emailing daily. She didn't. The emails continued for months. I asked her to stop in person and online, but she persisted. Finally, another coworker, her friend, talked to her and the emails stopped. Bonus, I moved far away, literally across the world. Months later, a coworker emailed, asking what city I lived in. I told her, and she said she'd heard the email girl was moving to that same small city. It couldn't be a coincidence, right? I asked for details and it got creepier. She was moving to my neighborhood, got a job, and was looking for an old friend. I panicked for a week until my ex-coworker admitted she was messing with me. Story 15. She always wore a nice sun hat, never taking it off except to sleep. I didn't mind, it looked beautiful on her. My friends warned she wasn't all there, but that didn't bother me. Everyone has struggles. The first time we were about to get intimate, she said, "The hat stays on during this." It was odd but didn't affect my experience, so I let it go. A week later, she was napping, leaving the hat on the floor. Wanting to be kind, I picked it up to place on her desk, where she usually kept it while sleeping. That's when I found a hidden camera inside. I realized she'd recorded everything we'd done together. I ended it immediately, feeling violated by her recording without consent. It took 2 years to date again. Recently, I checked her Facebook and found a link to personal photos of me and other men I know. I contacted them and we filed a lawsuit and pressed charges against her. Story 16. I was a bartender for about a decade. One night, 2 couples came in. The women sat at one end of the bar, the men at the other to watch sports, as there weren't 4 seats together. The men discussed how their wives had low libidos and they weren't having sex. Meanwhile, the wives spent half an hour talking about which waiters and waitresses they wanted to sleep with, detailing what they do. 10 minutes later, they called me over and told me exactly what they wanted to do to me. Just before leaving for their table, one wrote her number on a napkin. Now, whenever I hear a married woman say she has a low libido, I think of that night. Is her libido really low, or is she telling her friends all the dirty things she'd do to others while her husband's just meters away? Story 17. I'm not a man, but I remember a former friend in my freshman year with serious stalking issues. She slept with a guy, let's call him D, met at a bar and became obsessed. They hooked up, even dated briefly, but 2 months after he ghosted her, it scared me. I visited her house and used her bathroom. There, I saw a pile of nail clippings and hair. I yelled, "Want me to throw these out?" She burst in screaming, "Don't throw them out, they're D's." She got frantic, then tried convincing me to use my thermal camera, owned for legit university research, to spy on him at night to ensure he wasn't with another woman. She'd sent him over 100 messages that day and needed to confirm he wasn't cheating. We drifted apart after that. Story 18. I dated a girl with deep emotional damage from a past relationship. She didn't trust me because her ex cheated, assuming all men were the same. She didn't want me going to bars with friends, claiming men only go to pick up girls. One night we were together and I left early, can't recall why. I was living with my parents while apartment hunting. At 1 a.m. I went to the kitchen for water. Passing the front door, I glanced through the window and saw her burgundy Oldsmobile Alero creeping past my house. Lights off, stopping at the driveway's end. She was checking if my car was there to confirm I was home. It disturbed me, but I didn't confront her to avoid embarrassment. A couple of days later, I tested if she'd do it again. I went home early, turned off all lights, and waited. Sure enough, she did. Not long after, she introduced me to her stunning friend, way out of my league. My girlfriend found an excuse to leave us alone, and her friend immediately asked for my number, suggesting we go out. I'm not the smartest, but it was obviously a trap. I didn't give my number, left, and ended the relationship soon after. Story 19. At 19 to 20, I worked part-time at a local store. After work, I'd find notes tucked under my car's windshield wiper. At first, they were casual, "You're cute, nice to meet you," unsigned with no clues about the sender. I didn't think much of it, but they became frequent, turning into full love letters about loneliness, wanting to be my girlfriend but being too shy to talk. I got worried and asked coworkers if they knew anything. Nobody did, they just found it funny. One night, there was no note, but inside my car was a wrapped gift with an envelope. I opened it, a very expensive whiskey bottle. I threw it out, read the letter, and it was vulgar, clearly written by a woman. I still didn't know who it was. The next nights, more gifts appeared. A bag of marijuana, a CD of my favorite band, a restaurant gift card. I was terrified and told my boss, but they brushed it off, wishing me luck. That night, I ensured my car was locked. Story 20. I was on a bus talking to my friend when he said, "By the way, a girl told me she likes you and plans to sneak into your room to watch you sleep. I had to tell you because she threatened to hurt me if I didn't." I didn't believe him at first, but the next morning, I noticed some hair missing. That's when I thought, what the hell? For the next year it kept happening. I returned to camp and it occurred again. I started locking my window. That same night, I heard aggressive banging and a whispering voice saying, "I know you're there, my name, open the damn window." I froze, realizing I had to act. I started sleeping with my cane. I'm not fully blind but use one. I haven't returned since 2018 but plan to this year. I hope it doesn't happen again. It left a psychological scar. Story 21. A good friend from high school rejected me but wanted to stay friends. She dated my friend, which didn't bother me as she introduced me to her friends. I never had a serious girlfriend but had fun, if you catch my drift. We graduated, went separate ways, and lost touch. In college, I met a girl, dated, and married her after graduation. She's still my wife. Shortly after marrying, my old friend, married for years to someone I didn't know, started calling. We talked like old friends, but she suddenly said she was pregnant. I said, "Congrats, great for you guys." She told me before her husband. Then she learned it was twins. Days later, she called, saying she had big regrets. I asked what, and she said she regretted we never got together. I replied, "Well, you rejected me and dated my friend. We were just friends." She suggested we sleep together once, claiming it was fine since she was pregnant. I refused. Then she dropped the bomb, "I wish my twins were yours and mine. I've been in love with you from the start, always thought we'd end up together until you got serious with someone." I said I was sorry but we couldn't talk anymore. I think she had marital issues and wanted out. Knowing I'd liked her years ago, instead of ending her marriage maturely, she sought an excuse to ruin it. She also knew I'd graduated and got a job in my field, while her husband was a tradesman. I cut contact, told my wife immediately. She found it amusing and even kept my old friend on Facebook. Story 22. When I was single, I played the field, so to speak. This was in the early internet days, pre-smartphones. I met many crazy people, but the strangest was a girl I met online on a Wednesday. By Sunday night, she was stalking outside my bedroom window. We'd met in person Friday, had an intimate moment, as was common then, and Saturday I went with her to a barbecue with her whole family. She introduced me as her long-term boyfriend. Her mom asked about kids. It was bizarre. Sunday I spent with friends and went to the movies, turning off my phone. When I turned it back on, I had 14 voicemails from her, escalating from questions to pleas to screams, convinced I was cheating. We'd only met in person 2 days earlier. I laughed with my friends saying, "Women are crazy, bro," and brushed it off. At 2 a.m. I got a text. "We need to talk. I know you're there. I'm watching you." She was outside my window. I panicked as she nearly broke down the door. She left a 4-page note, almost a manifesto, taped to my door, a window into a deranged mind. It bothered me for months, but she found another guy. I occasionally check. She seems moderately sane now, one of those live, laugh, love ladies. Sometimes I wonder what a third date would have been like. She'd probably have stabbed me for looking at another woman.